This video will help you with to study for the Chapter 5 test. It's a practice test video. It'll give you the answers and explanations about how to get answers for each item. When you write ratios, you can write them in three ways. The first way is shown, 8:5. You could also write it 8 fraction bar 5, or you could write it with words, 8:5. So either of these two would be a correct response to number 1. There's a couple ways that you could approach filling out the ratio table. Probably the most helpful way, since it applies to other items on your test, is to write the ratio 10:4, which is given, and then use cross products to figure out what's that 15 to what. So it's 15 over n, and then when you cross multiply, you'd say 4 times 15 is the same as 10 times n. So 60 would equal 10n. I'm just going to make it really short here and say n equals 6. Because you would have 60 here and divide by 10 to give you 6. Then you could say 10⁴ equals what to 2? You could use equal fractions here, because you can see that if you cut 4 in half, divide 4 by 2, you get 2, divide 10 by 2, and you get 5. Then you could say 10⁴ equals 20 to the number you're looking for. You can double 10 to get 20, double 4 to get 8. Or you could use cross products either way. Then you can look at the last one, say 10⁴ is the same as a number compared to 12. And with equal fractions, you can see that you multiply by 3 and multiply 10 by 3, and you get 30. Problem 3, if a heart beats 12 times in 20 seconds, how many times will it beat in 5 minutes? So we kind of want to say 12 to 20 equals something over 5, but the trick about that is, or the tricky thing is, 20 seconds is a unit of time and 5 minutes is a unit of time, but they're not the same unit, so we have to convert them to be the same unit. And we can make seconds a fraction of a minute, but it's probably more convenient to change 5 minutes to seconds by doing 5 minutes times 60 seconds per 1 minute. Minutes cancels, so 5 minutes would equal 300 seconds. So we want to compare, we want to put in, let me move this up a little bit. We want to say 12 times in 20 seconds is the same as how many in 300 seconds. Then cross multiply. We get 20n equals 12 times 300. So here we're just going across using cross products. Now we solve the equation, undo multiplying by 20 by dividing by 20. And you can do 12 times 300 is 3,600 and figure out how many times 20 goes into 3,600. It's a bit easier to divide both by 10 right there. Then divide 12 and 2 both by 2. And 6 times 30 is 180. So there's our answer, 180 times. Heart would beat 180 times in 5 minutes. Do 7/6 and 11/9 form a proportion. So we can look at it this way. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. If 7 times 9 equals 6 times 11, they do equal each other. When we do the math, we get 63. I'll put a question mark there. Does not equal 66, so the answer is no. They don't form a proportion. What value for n would make this true? And we can't use equal properties very easily, because there's not a whole number you can multiply by 9 to get 15. So we'll use cross products. 15n equals 9 times 25. So we have one step equation to undo. Divide both sides by 15. And we could do 225 divided by 15, but again, it's going to be easier to reduce before you multiply. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 5 goes into 25 5 times. Then 9 and 3 have a common factor. 3 goes into 3 one time. 3 goes into 9 3 times. And we're left with 3 times 5. And should ask if it's reasonable. If you look back up here, 15 to 9, is that about 25 to 15? Sure, yep, that's pretty good. To solve the proportion 2 to 7 is what to 56, and to 56 we actually could use cross product, or could use equal fractions, because you can multiply 7 times 8 to get 56, and 2 times 8 would give you 16. So you could be done with doing it that way, but I'll go ahead and do it with cross product since it's sort of a theme in this chapter. 7n equals 2 times 56. Divide both sides by 7. N equals 7 goes into 57 and goes in 7 one time, and into 56 8 times, and 2 times 8 is 16. In the same way, we'll multiply 100n. 100 times n would equal 12 times 75. Divide both sides by 100. Maybe start by dividing 25 into 100, goes 4 times. 25 into 75 goes 3 times. 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 12 3 times. N equals 3 times 3, and that's 9. So 12 over 100 is 9 out of 75. Sounds about right. A tree 20 feet tall casts a shadow 25 feet long. How tall is a tree that casts a shadow 45 feet long? We have to make sure that how we form a proportion here, that we match shadow length to shadow length and tree height to tree height. So we can make the framework, and we could start by saying the actual height of the tree that we know and its shadow length is 20 to 25. We don't know the actual height of the tree whose shadow length we know, but we do know we want to match up those 25-foot shadow length and 45-foot shadow length in the same position. So that we would put whatever we want to put here, maybe H would go in this spot. You could flip this and make it 25 over 20 equals 45 over H. That doesn't really matter how you do that. Let's slide these things up. So we would say 25 times H. Yep. Check that. Should be 20. Yeah, 25 times H equals 20 times 45. Divide both sides by 25. You have a choice of things you want to do here. We'll start by dividing by 5, and we would get 5 over, and this would go 9. 5 goes into 45 9 times. Then we can do 5 into 20. 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 into 24 times. And so H would be 36 feet. So we want to see if that makes sense. The actual tree height would be 36 feet if the shadow is 45, and that's about right. You'd think that 20 to 25 is about the same as 36 to 45. So good answer. Number 9, a map scale is 4 inches for every 6 miles. So if it's 4 inches on the map, it's 6 miles actual distance. If two towns are 10 inches apart on a map, how far apart are they in miles? So you know intuitively that it's more than 12, because if you double 4, you get 8. Double 6, you get 12. So just to kind of give you a reasonable guess about it. So we would say that 4 to 6 is the same as 10 map length. So 4 inches, 10 inches, they match up in position. And we can say D here if you want to for distance. So when we solve it, we're going to go 4D equals 6 times 10. Divide both sides by 4. We can see this is 60 divided by 4, which is 15. But I'll go ahead and me, I love reducing before we multiply. 2 goes into 2 4 times. 2 goes into 4 2 times, sorry. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 goes into 2 1 time here, and into 6 3 times, and 3 times 5 is 15. So the actual distance would be 15 miles. Okay, shouldn't even have to tell you. Out of 100. Sorry about the two number 10s. I think it's that way in your test too, so you kind of get a heads up on that. When you change a decimal number to a percent, you multiply the decimal by 100. And the effect of that is just moves the decimal two places. You don't even have to think about it being multiplied by 100. You're just going to go over 1, 2, and add an index, a percent sign. That's 84%. This is the number 10 here can really help you set the pattern because it's a very straightforward problem. The others are just a little more complex, but not really that much. You're going to move the decimal over two places here, but you don't put 08, you just put 8. Then when you move it in this, you move it over 1, 2, and it would be 225. Helps to remember. Percent means out of 100. And 1 is 100%, so 2 is 200%. 0.25 is 25%. So this is basically, just a way to look at it is it's 200 plus 25, 200% plus 25%. Just a way to kind of justify that 225. 1 out of 4 is 1 out of 100. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it, and you've seen enough cross products to know what to do with that. You can make a 4 divided into 1.0. That would go 2 times 0.2. Remainder 2, annex another 0. It's 5. Then you have to change the decimal 0.25 to a percent. That would be 25%. And of course up here you'd get just a number 25. It would be 25 over 100. And you know percents out of 100, and you should know 0.25 is 25%. And you should know that a quarter, like coin a quarter, is 25 cents. And you should just plain know, without doing any of this stuff, that 1/4 is 25%. 3/8, you can try to set it up out of 100, but that's going to be tricky. Sorry, and over 100 I should have. This is a little more straightforward to do 8 into 3.00. This is also one on your list of things to have memorized, so you might know right off the bat what the answer is to this. 8 goes into 3 0 times, 8 goes into 30 3 times, remainder 6. 8 goes into 67 times. The remainder is going to be, well, I guess I can slide it up. And I'm going to get 56, remainder 4. It goes into 45 times, and then remainder 0. So that would be 0.375, which converts to 37.5%. And you could have made it also 37.5% if you like. So either one is an acceptable way to write the response to number 14. Either 37.5 or 37.5%. 80% as a decimal is 0.8. You can make it 0.80, but you're basically going to drop the percent sign and move the decimal over two places. You want to rationalize this. 80% is 80 out of 100. That reduces to 8/10. And if you just hear yourself say 8/10, that's the way you'd write it as a decimal. But you see the rule. Again, this is sort of an easy start to get the pattern for you if you forgot it, of just moving the decimal two places to the left and drop the percent sign. So here, move the decimal two places to the left, put it in front of the 4, and it would be 0.405. Hopefully you've memorized that 87.5%. It is the same, it's the same as 0.875, and that is 7/8. But in case you forgot, it's good to know the strategy. Percent means out of 100, so it's 87.5 out of 100, and that's not a fraction because of that decimal. So you have to multiply it by 10, and multiply that by 10, and get 875 over 1,000, which is also what 8/7 is. You can divide them both by 125. I'll just make it quick. And you'd get 7 over 8. 37.5% as a fraction. It's 3/8. Same technique, you make it 37.5 out of 100, 375 over 1,000. Divide both by 125. You could divide by 5, then divide by 5 again, and then divide by 5 a third time. You can break it down in little steps if you want to. It's going to come out to be 3/8. You might be able to go back to, I can't remember the item number, where we had kind of dealt with this one before, the number 37.5%. And you might have remembered that it was 3/8 as a fraction in the previous item in the test. The half as a decimal, you can, well, all right, you know it's 0.5. Hopefully we're there, you know it's 0.5. But if you forgot, you can make it 2 divided into 1.0. 2 doesn't go into 1, put a 0 there. Bring the decimal straight up. 2 goes in 10 5 times. And you got remainder 0, you're done. It's 0.5. Then what is 10% of 80? A couple ways to do this one. We really like the part to whole equals percent, so you'd make the framework. You know the percent is 10%, so you always put 100 here. The 10% will tell you if that goes in this spot right here. So you have to figure out where is the 80 going to go. And 80 follows the word of, which is a dead giveaway that it's the whole thing. So it's going to go in this spot. And then what you don't know is the number, what is 10% of 80? And hopefully, you know, you're good enough to look at that and say, oh, 10%, that's 1/10. 1/10 of 80 is 8. But again, this is one that kind of gets you, if you come back to this framework, it'll help you solve the more difficult problems. So I would say that 100n, I'll scoot things up here a little bit. 100n equals 80 times 10, divide both sides by 100. I can knock a 0 off here, knock a 0 off here. Then I've got 8 times 1 over 1. So n indeed does equate. I'm going to set this one up with the part to whole equals percent, and then I'm going to do it with the sort of the way that you would translate the words into mathematical symbols. What's 25% of 140? You would set your framework up. 25% would be here. 140 goes here. It's the whole thing, and there's n. Or the other way to do this is to say 25% is 0.25. Of means times 140. The what is an n, the unknown thing. And then you might also say, I'd rather work with 1/4, because I know 25% is 1/4. I'd rather do 1/4 of 140. And you can take 1/4 of 100 and add it to 1/4 of 40, and you'd get the answer, which would be, I'll go ahead and, maybe I should just do this. 140 times 0.25. I'm on the 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 1 is 2, 0, 0, 35? Yeah, 35. I could rationalize it saying 1/4 of 100, 1/4 of 100 is 25, 1/4 of 40 is 10, and 25 and 10 make 35. So 35 is a good answer. I'm not sure you can see that. 35.0, bring the decimal down. And by the way, if I did this, cross multiplying 100n equals 25 times 140. When I do all the math there, I'm going to get n equals 35. Same thing. Number 22, what percent of 64 is 16? We know the part and the whole, but we don't know the percent. So the framework will help you greatly. We don't know the percent. So that's going to be n. So what percent? That's n. The number after of is almost always the whole thing. And then that leaves 16 having to be the part. So when we cross multiply, we would get 64n equals 16 times 100. Divide by 64. 16 goes into 16 once and into 64 4 times. 4 goes into 4 one time. 4 goes into 25. 100 goes into 125 times. So we would get n equals 1 times 25. So n is 25. That means 25 over 100. So the answer would be 25%. And you might have recognized that this is 1/4, and 1/4 is 25%. 12 is what percent of 36? So again, we're going to have the, where we know the part and the whole, but we don't know the percent. So if we don't know percent, we let that be an unknown. Out of 100, after of is 36, goes where the whole thing goes. 12 is the part. You could work with the same proportion would say 1 to 3 is what out of 100. Because 12 over 36 is the same as 1 to 3. So that's just reducing it. Then this would be 3n equals 1 times 100, that's 100. Divided by 3. This would be 33. And you can make it 0.3 repeating or just kind of cut it off. Make it 33 1/3. It's going to go 3 times, remainder 1. You're going to keep getting 1s. And right here, you can go 1/3. So our n is 33 1/3, which is 33 1/3 out of 100. So be sure that you label it 33 1/3%, or 33.3 repeating percent. A person's weekly salary increases from $450 to $750. What's the percent increase? So we have to find out how much it changed, because our formula would say that percent increase equals the amount of the change compared to the original amount. So the change is 750 minus 450, and the original amount was 450. To see where we started from, and this is going to be a percent increase. So this is going to be 300 over 450. You can actually knock those zeros off and use 30 to 45. And that would be the percent increase. So we have to say that's what out of 100. You can, there's a shortcut here. You can make this 2/3, because 30 over 45 is 2/3. But I will go ahead and work it out probably the way I would prefer not to, but just to make it simple. So make sure we don't lose track of what we're doing. 45n equals 30 times 100. Divide both sides by 45. So I'm going to get to do the reducing here anyway. 15 goes into 30 twice. 15 goes into 45 3 times. So we're going to get 200 over 3. And you might be thinking, I know 100 over 3 is 33 1/3, so 200 divided by 3 should be 66 2/3, and you would sure be right. But I want to go ahead and do that math. But the answer is 66 2/3%. If you want to go ahead and fast forward to the next problem, go ahead. This would be 3 goes into 26 times. Remainder 2, 3 goes into 26 times. Remainder 2, and just make it 2/3. Just cleaner if you do that. So back here, this n would be 66 2/3, which is 66 2/3 out of 100. So the answer to the problem would be 66 2/3%. Number 25 is going to use the equation that interest equals principal times rate times time. If you invest $850 at a rate of 9% for 2 years, how much interest will you earn? So the principal is $850. Erase that. Make it a little plainer. The rate is 9% or 0.09. And the time is 2 years. The time is always in years. So if you get months, you have to convert that to years. So if it's 6 months, make it 0.5 years. So what I'm going to say that the number I'm looking for, the interest, is going to be 850 times 0.09 times 2. And I'm going to group this together and do it mentally. That's 850 times 9 times 2 is 18, so it's going to be 0.18. And I need a little more space to do this math. 850 times 0.18. Feel free to fast forward if you want to, because this is a little tedious just watching me do this. 8 times 0 is 0. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 8 is 64, and 6 more is 68. Placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 8 is 8. Add the partial products. Bring the decimal point straight down, and we would get 153, and that decimal point represents the dot that separates dollars and cents. So it would be, the interest would be $153 even. A jet ski normally sells for $5,100, but it's reduced by 12%. What's the price of the jet ski? So we need to find the amount of the discount. It's discounted. This is probably the traditional way to do it, but sure, a much easier way is to just say if it's 12% off, it's 88% on, and then just figure out what 88% of 5,100 is. But you had to do a subtraction there, 100 minus 12, and then do a multiplication. The more traditional way is to do the multiplication first and then do the subtraction. So I'll do it that way. Well, it's actually going to be a cross product. So we're going to say the whole thing is 5,100. We don't have the part, that's the amount of the discount, but it's 12%, 12 out of 100. So 100N equals 12 times 5,100. Divide both sides by 100, like this. So it's going to be 12 times 51. But the 12 times 51 is going to be the discount amount, and I'm going to have to subtract that from 5,100 once I calculate it. Okay, so there's a $612 discount, and I have to subtract that from $5,100. So the selling price should be $4,488. Or I could just do 5,100 times 88%. And that's sort of one step. Some of that's done in your head, but that would get you the answer too. Number 27, if you spend $75 on a meal, how much should your tip be if you tip at a rate of 20%? So you could say 20% of 75 and get the answer. It's one way to do it, quick way, probably my preferred way. 20% times 75, which would be $15 if you do the math. But you also might like, to be consistent and talk about part to whole equals percent. You want a 20% tip, so it's 20 over 100. The whole thing is 75. You don't see an of there, but you just have to figure that the whole thing is 75 and the tip is your part of it. 100 equals 20 times 75. Divide by 100. Divide by 100. Divide 10 by 10. And then 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 goes into 2 1 time. 5 goes into 5 1 time. 5 goes into 75 15 times. And 15 times 1 is 15. You don't have to do that reducing before you multiply. You'd still get 15. Just do it the way it's easiest for you. But it's going to be a $15 tip, and you should ask, is that reasonable? Well, you might not think so, but your waitress sure would.